We say that the internet isn't owned by anybody. It's a public network. So if that's true, who's in charge of it? Who makes the rules and who sets up the numbers and things like that? Well, it turns out that there are lots of different organizations that we have given responsibility to for various things dealing with the internet. And we're going to look at a few of them here. First is the Ietf, or Internet Engineering Task Force. So these guys set standards such as the protocols that we use, IP protocol, the TCP protocol, those kinds of protocols that we use for communicating across the internet in different languages or different protocols for different services. They publish their protocols and their papers through something called RFCs, which stands for Request for Comment. So once it's been finalized, you're now welcoming comments from experts and the general public so that you might improve things in the future. So they call it a request for comment. So I gave an example here. The RFC 1918 is the RFC that defines private IP address spaces for local networks. The W3C, or World Wide Web Consortium, is an organization that deals with web technologies, not the entire internet, but just the World Wide Web. They publish the standards for the languages used, for example, HTML and CSS, JavaScript, and all of that. The IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, is an engineering organization that publish standards about some of the low-level physical aspects of communicating. So, for example, Ethernet, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, those kinds of things. And they use a system of a number and then a working group. So, for example, you see 802.3. Well, the .3 is the working group within the 802 standard. The 802.11 is the Wi-Fi standard. And I see that I mistyped that, and that 9 should be an opening parenthesis. 802.15 is Bluetooth. So 802 has to do with communication across these various physical media. And then the working groups, 3, 11, 15, defined some of the types of technologies that we use for doing that. By the way, the IEEE is responsible for the distribution of MAC addresses, because the MAC address is a physical burned-in address, as we call it. We'll learn more about that later. It's a unique address on every network interface card. Every computer that communicates has at least one network interface card or network adapter in it, and each of those adapters has a unique number, and they hand out blocks of those numbers. The ITU, or International Telecommunication Union, there are several groups. ITU-T is one of them that is most commonly associated with internet technologies. These guys are responsible for international control of radio frequencies. Now we have a national organization that does that for the U.S., but it is also under the rules of the ITU-T. They have standards that look like this: letter, dot, number. So for example, X.25 is a packet switched wide area network technology. ICANN, or the International Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, this is an international organization that's responsible for the names and numbers used by various protocols. And by the way, IANA is a subdepartment of ICANN. So the IANA, or Internet Assigned Number Authority, specifically deals with IP addresses and the domain naming system, the official domain names that are usable on the internet. What are the top level domains that you can use, for example, like com, net, org, mil, and so on. So they are responsible for maintaining and handing those out. There's more. The FCC, this is our national organization that deals with radio frequencies that we can use for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and so on. ISO, and I see I have a typo here. This should be International Standards Organization. It is an international organization that provides standards across many fields. These are the guys that publish the communication models that talk about the stages that we go through in communicating from one computer to another. Finally, the NIST, or National Institute of Standards. This is an organization, of course a U.S. national organization, that maintains standards such as what is the actual definition of a certain length, a meter, for example, or how much does something weigh? What's the standard weight by which we compare all of our scales to make sure that it lives up to the standard? Well, they actually like to publish a lot of standards that have to do with cybersecurity, passwords, that kind of thing, as well as some of the new technologies like the Internet of Things, which would be doorbell cams and smart light controls and things of that nature. Now, these are not complete by any means. There are other organizations that are also involved in some internet related standards, but these are most of the big ones.